Yeah.
Thanks, Vicky. So being 9 a.m, I'll declare the Council Ordinary Meeting of the 10th of December open. Significant meeting for myself and the Interim Management Committee. It'll be my last, even though I'm here in this role for more than a month still, it'll be my last council meeting. And I said to someone before the meeting, they've always felt a little bit strange doing these meetings, and they still do. But this one feels a bit strange too. Anyway, look, pursuant to section 8.4.5 of Council's meeting procedures policy, I invite the Interim Management Committee to address any matters the Council has before it. I'm also bound to declare conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest. The members of the Interim Management Committee are not legally bound to do so, but in accordance with the Interim Management Committee Charter, they will also declare those conflicts of interest. Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges traditional owners as custodians of the land upon which we meet, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, as the keepers of the traditions, cultures and stories of a proud people. I'd ask you all please to stand for the reading of the prayer. Let us in silence pray or reflect upon our responsibilities to the people of Ipswich. We meet today to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. Thank you. Agenda item D, apologies and leaves of absence, we have nil. Agenda item E, condolences, nil. Item F, tributes. One tribute from me to the Interim Management Committee. Thank you very much for your advice and assistance, direction, counselling when I needed it, pardon the pun, over the last 15 months. It's been much appreciated. Couldn't have done this job without you all, so really appreciate your individual and collective efforts. Thanks very much. Agenda item G, presentation of petitions, we have nil. H, presentations and deputations, nil. Agenda item I is confirmation of the minutes of the last council meeting, the 19th of November. I'll resolve that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on 19th of November 2019 be confirmed. J, a mayoral minute, nil at this point. And agenda item K, declarations of interests in matters on the agenda. So I have declared potential perceived conflicts of interest for a number of agenda items in the Economic Development Committee, item 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. And they were all about my previous employment with Rambry Management Group, who are a primary consultant for the CBD redevelopment from 2008-2012. I was an employee and a director and part owner of Rambry, but I have no current working relationship with the company other than through this role as interim administrator. So I remained in the committee meetings and remained in this council meeting. Stan, you'd noticed a conflict of interest for agenda item 2 at the time?
Yes, in relation to the report. So item 2, the involvement of KPMG as my firm, just for transparency, declared that perceived conflict of interest whilst stating that I had no involvement inside or oversight of that project. So completely detached and as such remained in the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. And for today's council meeting, there's a report on the Commonwealth Hotel, the retail components of the Nicholas Street redevelopment. So the same potential conflict of interest from me from Rambry applies to that. And again, as I have no role, personal financial benefit to that, I participate in this meeting. Agenda item L, business outstanding matters lying on the table to be dealt with, we have nil. And agenda item M, committee consideration of committee reports. We have those committee reports, of course. Economic Development Committee. I will take the Economic Development Committee report of number 12 of the 3rd of December 2019 be received and adopted. Growth and Infrastructure Committee. I'll take that Growth and Infrastructure Committee report number 12 of 3rd of December be received and adopted. I don't think I've got any particular comments to make about any of the committee reports for a change. Communities Committee report of 3rd of December be received and adopted. Resolve the Environment Committee report 3rd of December be received and adopted. With the Governance Committee, there's a slight change proposed for the minutes of that committee. Thanks, Simone, for raising that. There was a sentence here that didn't quite make sense. So So the second paragraph of the commentary in relation to item 7 be amended as follows. Simone Webb from the Interim Management Committee raised a concern with this suggestion, stating that maybe the review could be confined to Council's role as a media outlet as a policy determination. And that does make more sense. If you're comfortable with that amendment, we will take the Governance Committee report number 12 of the 3rd of December be received and adopted, subject to the amendment that I just read out. Okay, agenda item N is officers' reports. 7 officers' reports, I think we have. The first one is the adoption of a meeting conduct policy, public participation at council ordinary meeting policy. CEO, do you want to comment on that policy at all? Giving you no warning to do so.
Yes. Look, it's an opportunity for public participation at the council meeting. Obviously, we're setting a standard. The incoming council can determine how they do it. Numerous councils do it in different ways, and there's a proposal here to allow the public to address the council meeting on matters.
So I think that's a great innovation, and you'll note we've really focused that questions need to be about strategic and policy matters, so it's not the forum for members of the public to talk about operational issues of councils per se. So it is linked to the current strategic plan of council, Advance Ipswich Strategy, so members of the public can come and talk to council, ask some questions about council about strategies and policies, long-term strategies and policies. The other policy, the meeting conduct policy, these two are actually the final piece of our jigsaw of governance and integrity for councillors. So once these two policies are adopted, there is no more I think that I could do as council in terms of setting the framework up for councillor behaviour and conduct. The meeting policy one is adopted from the state standard meeting policy. So we will now have, I think, the most contemporary and relevant set of councillor conduct and governance policies in the state. And that's this, as I said, the resolution of this is the last piece of that puzzle. Any comments from IMC? No. So I will resolve the policy entitled Meeting Conduct Policy is detailed in Attachment 1 be adopted. The policy titled Public Participation at Council Ordinary Meetings is detailed in Attachment 2 be adopted. And that the meetings procedure policy under section 8.4.3 order of business will be amended by the incorporation of a following business item for each council meeting, public participation, and the amendment of the business outstanding business item to include the words including conduct matters. Thank you. Second officer's report, acquisition of land for road purposes, Redbank Plains Road, stage 3. Yes, Andrew.
This is a acquisition of land as per the report there. A lot of consultation was taken both internally and externally with the community. Very receptive to the project and the requirement to acquire part of their land.
Okay, thank you. I will resolve that Council, having duly considered this report dated 25th of November 2019, be of the opinion that the following properties shown in attachments 1 to 3 be required for the acquisition of road purposes. Part of Lot 35 and RP 135047 2 Shannon Street, Redbank Plains. Part of Lot 8, RP 856263 at 204 to 206 Redbank Plains Road, Belbert Park. And part of Lot 1 and RP 119577 at 208 to 210 Redbank Plains Road, Belbert Park. B, that Council exercises power as a constructing authority under the Acquisition of Land Act 1967 and acquire the land as described in the recommendation A of this report dated 25th of November 2019 for road purposes. And C, that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to negotiate compensation and perform any other matters arising out of the Acquisition Land Act 1967. I think that should be Acquisition of Land Act 1967, or otherwise, and to do other acts necessary to implement Council's decision to acquire this land in accordance with Section 13.3 of the Local Government Act 2019. Third Officer's Report, acquisition of land for road purposes at part of 14 William Street, Blackstone.
Through
Henry.
Chair, this is acquisition
Thank you. Comments? None. So I will resolve 3 matters. A, that Council, having duly considered this report dated 26th November 2019, be of the opinion that the following property shown in attachment 1 be required for acquisition of road purposes. That is part of lot 25 on RP 110739, 14 William Street, Blackstone. B, that Council acquire the land by agreement as described in recommendation A of this report dated 26th November 2019 for road purposes. And C, that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to negotiate compensation and perform any other matters arising out of the Acquisition of Land Act 1967 or otherwise, and to do any other acts necessary to implement Council's decision to acquire this land in accordance with Section 13(3) of the Local Government Act of 2019. Agenda item 4, Brisbane Lions Stadium Funding Agreement. Officer going to talk about it? Sean, you might want to come down to the... Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So this report relates to Council's contribution towards the Brisbane Lions Stadium at Springfield. As you'd be aware, in 2015, I think there was an original heads of agreement signed between Council and the Lions. There was a subsequent heads of agreement signed in 2017. The agreement stipulates that Council will provide the Springfield City Group's developer contributions for the particular fields in question, which are development areas 22A and 22B. Provide that Council will provide those funds directly through to the Brisbane Lions for the development of the stadium. We've been in negotiations with SCG as to the amount of that contribution, and it is a complex and somewhat convoluted history, but the calculation for the contribution in total from SCG is calculated at approximately 10.6 million, which takes into account the LGIP construction rates. In the course of the intervening period between the heads of agreement and now, Council has agreed to actually shift certain amounts of those contributions away from the development of those sports fields. There was courts that were transferred from development areas 22A and 22B to development areas 16 and 17, which are the southern sports fields. That contribution is approximately $521,800. So those have been delivered as part of the southern sports fields that everyone is probably aware of down at Springfield, which are open and operating. Council also entered into negotiations with Springfield City Group in the realignment of Eden Station Drive when Council was constructing that particular road. The alignment of that was shifted to the south effectively, which impacted the ability of SCG to actually deliver the specified number of fields and courts on that particular field. As part of the negotiations for that realignment, Council agreed that there would be a reduction in the SCG contribution to development areas 22A and 22B of one field, which then reduces their contribution by a further $820,000, which has been agreed to between Council and SCG. In effect, what that means is that the entire SCG embellishment contribution value to the sports fields is in fact $9,046,264. The heads of agreement, when we signed up for that, committed that approximately $12 million contribution by Council to the Lions project. Based upon that stipulated, and I should say unbinding or non-binding contribution amount, the Lions then went and sought state and federal funding as part of this project. So it's important to understand that whilst the heads of agreement for $12 million was non-binding, it was in fact part of, if you will, Council's pitch to get the Lions to come out here and build their stadium here and not in Brisbane. There are obvious, community benefits to having a national sporting facility based in Ipswich. Nice for us to take something off Brisbane, which is a positive for Ipswich. So that was the basis upon which they determined that they would actually build the stadium out here and sought the federal funding. We then obviously calculated what the SCG contribution was, taking into account the reduction of the 6 courts that were delivered on the southern sports fields and the realignment of Road 10, bringing that contribution down to the $9 million. That obviously raised significant concerns with the Brisbane Lions in terms of a funding gap between their budgets and what they had anticipated they were receiving from council and what they would in fact receive. We then entered into negotiations with the Brisbane Lions in relation to those contributions amounts. They came forward to us and said that if we were to provide the embellishment costs for 22B, which is the field on the northern side of Eden Station Drive. I know this is a bit complicated to envisage, but the contribution from SCG relates to the embellishment of both fields, not just the one where the stadium is, so it does relate to both of those. By SCG paying that contribution to council, that means that we then have the responsibility to deliver embellished fields on both 22A, which will be the stadium, and 22B, which is the community-based sporting facilities. So they are in effect shifting the responsibility to council. That means that at some stage in the near future, council is required to expend funds to embellish Sports Field 22B, which is an obligation which is going to be tied up in a funding agreement with SCG as part of their $9 million contribution. So there will be a contractual requirement for us to embellish it. We've calculated those costs, yet again under the LGIP construction rate. It will cost us $3 million to embellish that to a local sports and courts facility for the community to use. That $3 million includes obviously your normal sports and courts and lighting, but does not include any clubhouses of any sort. A facility of that nature in that location, in council's mind, is going to require a clubhouse to be built at some stage. That's something that council would need to consider in the future if we were to go down that path. As part of the negotiations with the Brisbane Lions, what they proposed is that they would embellish that 22B, so the community sports fields on council's behalf, and would include in that embellishment a clubhouse for community use. So the reason that the Lions have an interest in developing and embellishing that field is they want to use it for warm-ups for the opposition players on game days, as well as for training when they want to rest the main playing surface. So there's a significant interest in them to do that from an operational perspective. That is the driver for them wanting to see that embellished sooner rather than later. As part of that, what they have requested is council consider contributing the $3 million that we would have to embellish, pay to embellish that particular field to the Brisbane Lions for the development of the stadium, contingent upon via a contractual arrangement that they would then embellish that other field to a local sports and courts and include a clubhouse on there within 4 years of us signing the contract with them in terms of a funding agreement. The benefit from a community perspective is that in council's existing long-term financial forecast, we don't have, in capital works program, there is no intent for us to embellish that particular sporting field, certainly within the next 10 years. By us providing this contribution to the Lions, obviously we meet, if you will, our moral obligations and ethical obligations under the heads of agreement of $12 million. We provide a total contribution to the Lions that meets their purposes. We get a community sports and courts facility delivered well ahead of time than what it would have otherwise if it was left with council. We also get, if you will, enhanced embellishment of that field because it will have a clubhouse and the like, and the intent of the Lions is to embellish it well and truly above the standard that we would normally do for a community sports and courts facility. The agreement would be effectively that we would lease that second field to the Brisbane Lions, but that would be also inclusive of community usage, which would be 90-95% of it. So it would go out to no different to any other sporting facilities that we have in council. You would send it out and get expressions of interest about which sporting clubs want to tenant the clubhouse and the sporting fields and use them. So in our mind, I think it meets our obligations under the heads of agreement and the state and federal funding that was committed. We get the Lions Stadium built in Ipswich, which is a positive for a number of reasons. We get a community sports and courts facility delivered ahead of time and to a higher standard than what would otherwise be delivered by council. down in that area. There is significant demand in relation to sports and courts, given the fact that it is probably the largest and quickest growing area within council. So we see this as a positive for the community and also council. If you were to take into effectively that we had committed under the original heads of agreement $12 million approximate contribution to the Lions Stadium, we would have actually effectively delivered that, given them that $12 million, and then had to wear the initial $3 billion to embellish that second field, which would have brought council's total contribution to approximately $15 million to embellish both of those fields at Springfield. This agreement would mean that our total contribution is actually significantly less than that $15 million, with a total of $13.6 million, so an approximate saving of $1.4 million for the ratepayers of Ipswich. If approved by council, we'll enter into those commercial arrangements and agreements with the Lions to ensure that they are contractually bound to deliver the embellishment of 22B, that second field, to the standard that they have specified. We will have a clause in the contract that if it isn't completed within the specified time frame, which we envisage to be 4 years, that they have to refund council that additional $3 million. So from an organisational and a community point of view, I think that mitigates the risk significantly. As I said, if they just don't deliver that within the 4-year time frame, the $3 million comes back to us, and then we fulfil our obligation to embellish that second field from a council perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Yeah, I know that's convoluted and complicated, but
It has been a big challenge for the organisation to deal with that because of the various agreements and arrangements and the obligations. And I think you explained it very well. Thank you. And you're correct. I do realise that the heads of agreement was non-binding legally. That's very clear. Ethically, morally, a different matter for me, particularly because that preceded the state and the Commonwealth have proceeded on that process as well. There is risk, obviously, in this decision, but there is already embedded risk in the decisions to date. So the council is funding the cost of the core earthworks to have a stadium-ready facility there anyway, at $5 or $6 million from memory. Also transferring the infrastructure charges of 9 or 10 or 12 million over. So there's risk in council funding being transferred. At the end of the day, the council owns these assets. So regardless of the lease arrangements, licence arrangements, etc., it's council-owned stadium and a council-owned sports fields and courts next door. Yeah. Comments from? No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Ron. I will resolve that council enter into contract with the Brisbane Lions in accordance with the funding arrangements specified in this report. And B, the Chief Executive be authorised to negotiate and finalise the terms of the contract to be executed by council and to do any other acts necessary to implement council's decision in accordance with section 13.3 of the Local Government Act of 2019, I think that should be. Agenda item 5, budget amendment. Andrew, yes.
This is the first amendment of the 1920 budget and long-term financial forecast in accordance with section 170. The report's very comprehensive there. The three main focus areas are an update from, we've now completed our audit, and there's consequential impacts on the balance sheet and the profit and loss which we adjust for. Secondly, we're updating the key assumptions relating to interest revenue, interest expense, and the waste management utility charges as detailed in the report. And the third, the biggest impact, excuse me, is the retail precincts of the Nicholas Street development, which are incorporated in here as well. There's some good discussion in there on the financial implications as well as the risk implications of that as well. Myself and Mr. Hitch and Mr. Molyneux are here, happy to answer questions if you have any queries.
Thanks, Andrew. So I think the interest revenue, interest expense, the waste management are pretty straightforward to understand. The largest, as you say, the largest impact is the retail precinct of the Nicholas Street redevelopment. This again is the last piece of the CBD. I think this is the last material decision that council can make in terms of this. It's obviously the work to be done to build it. but the final piece of that puzzle of the CBD at today's meeting as well. In essence, I think this council was put in the point where we had no choice. You know, council acquired for reasons the CBD over a decade ago. We've inherited that situation, and we've talked within committees and within council and community organisations about that fact. So it is not a matter of debate about whether we should have owned it or not. We do, and what was the best thing to do. Thank you, Steve, for chairing the steering committee on this work, and we have engaged a significant number of experts in the field to advise council on what to do. This is the best strategy, and there's a substantive amount of well-documented consulting advice to lead us to this point. In essence, we're going to spend approximately 43.6 million, I think it is, on the retail, commercial, entertainment buildings that council owns, redevelop, refurbish, lease them. The market advice from potential investors has really concluded or advised us that they're not greatly interested in acquiring these assets at this point in time. So notionally, we're talking about retaining these for a year or two before disposing of them. They are, in my view, and obviously a future council can form a different view, but in my view, not long-term assets that council should hold. But I think it's imperative from a city building point of view. Our only other choice was to do nothing and leave the buildings as they are. That's not really a choice to the community. I'm aware of the discussions that the organisation, the consultants are having with potential tenants and business operators, and a future council will, I think, have the joy of announcing those fruitful discussions, and they are going well, much better than I thought when we started in this process. So we're spending 43.6, I think, for memory, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, the approximate expected sale price is about 50 million for these, all going well. Yes, there's risks in this. Of course, there's significant risk in here. Bigger risk, I think, for the community is not doing anything. And given where we're at in this point in time, thanks to Steve and Andrew and the crew for all the work done to date. Any comments from IMC? Thank you. So in terms of budget amendment, I'll resolve two matters. A, the amended 2019-2020 budget and long-term financial forecast as detailed in attachments 1, 2 and 3 of the report by the Treasury Accounting Manager dated 1st of December 2019 be adopted. And B, that the amended debt policy as detailed in attachment 4 to the report by the Treasury Accounting Manager dated 1st of December 2019 also be adopted. Thank you. Agenda item 6, the delegation of council powers and functions to the Chief Executive. CEOs?
Well, Mr Dunleavy is the expert on this. This is essentially refreshing. This is the
Yes.
conclusion of a TP, or not the conclusion, but a significant part of a transformation project.
Thanks, Tony.
So this is part of the TP11 project. The report what's gone up is just in relation to the delegation, the repeal of the existing delegations from council to the CEO, and the introduction of the new delegation instrument with the schedule of all attached powers and a full description of all the powers. This just relates to the CEO. So I think there was around 80 existing delegation instruments. With this, there'll only be one delegation instrument, and all the schedule of powers are attached, and any conditions what are attached. So I think in the previous council meeting, a report might have gone up in relation to the Economic Development Act and some recent changes. I've managed to incorporate those into the delegation instrument, which has gone up. So yeah. So anybody got any questions in relation to?
So fundamentally, we have today 80 odd delegations from council to officers. This replaces it.
No, just from council to the CEO. We had 80 instruments. We had another 200 instruments from the CEO to council, which I'm in the process of finalising.
Okay,
now.
so this wraps all those into one
This
consolidated
wraps all that
delegation
into
from
one,
council to
one
CEO.
instrument with all the powers properly described, and this can then go online in terms of a register, so members of the public can look at what powers are delegated and a proper description of all those powers what are delegated.
And that's only decision of council, and then the CEO can, at your discretion, sub-delegate.
Yeah, and then there's
Without
a schedule
council.
of sub-delegation.
Yeah, there's a schedule of sub-delegation instruments, so that's what I'm currently working on at the moment, converting what we've already got, and there's a lot of new powers what have come in.
Yep.
So I'll put a report up to David, and that will finalise that, which should be in the next week or
Yeah.
two.
Okay. Thank you. And this, in the end, closes one of our 18 transformation projects. Thank you.
It will do.
Yes.
Mm.
Thank you. I will therefore resolve two matters. A, the interim administrator of Ipswich City Council will repeal all the instruments of delegations from council to the chief executive officer, as detailed in attachment 1 of this report, dated 3rd of December 2019. And B, the interim administrator of Ipswich City Council delegate all the powers or functions of the Ipswich City Council to the chief executive in accordance with the delegation instrument LGD 2019-1, including attached schedule of powers as attachment 3, as detailed in attachment 2 of this report, dated 3rd of December 2019. Thank you. Last officer's report is project management services for the Commonwealth Hotel and retail components of Nicholas Street. I will not resolve as per the recommendation here, because my practice in the past, in terms of my potential perceived conflict of interest as a previous employee and director of Ranbury, have decided not to make any decisions that involves a contract between council and Ranbury. So instead of the proposed resolutions to make those changes, I will resolve to delegate that decision to the Chief Executive Officer. Okay, Vicky? Thank you. Agenda item O, notices of motion, nil. Agenda item P, questions on notice, nil. Closing comments. I got a couple, surprisingly. So this is my final council meeting. It's been a privilege and an honour to be in this role for the past 15 months, and as I said, I will finish my term here on the 10th of January. It's been a 15, or then it'll be 16-month journey for us all, I think, for council, for myself, for the interim management committee, for staff, and most noticeably to me, for the community. So, and there's still much more change and evolution to happen, I think, in community and staff. Not so much for us as we move forward. We have achieved substantial reform. I will release a report in my last week, which will be the first week of January, hopefully. So that's what I'm doing over Christmas, New Year, on all the achievements we've done. So it's not a huge report, but it'll be a summary with lots of links to the work we've done, all the transformation projects we've done, and some of the other key initiatives I think that have been achieved. And that's really, I think, a statement for council staff and for the community to understand the journey that we've all been on for the last, it'll be then 16 months. I think we've made some significant achievements in terms of the councillor role, integrity, performance, the interactions between councillors and staff. As I said, today's meeting was interesting timing, wasn't it, in terms of the final piece of that puzzle in terms of councillor governance and integrity. I think there are no more decisions that are standing in the place of council that I could make. It's really up to the incoming set of elected representatives to live those documents and live those values and live those policies that we put in place. And the CBD being the other big challenge, and again, coincidentally, the last final piece of the puzzle in terms of council decision on the CBD redevelopment. I do understand there's major ongoing reform in terms of the operating area of council across a number of areas, not everything, but a number of areas. And I do thank David, much appreciated, for coming on board and committing yourself to this council for the years ahead. And it'll be an interesting journey. And I'm very confident in the ability of the council to recover from where you were. I look around the room and think of where we were 15, 16 months ago. It's a very different room than where we were. And also confident in the community's ability to move forward. One of the great community meetings I went to was a Thursday a couple of weeks ago. 150 people, and they were looking to set up a peak body of community organisations to deal constructively with council. That was not possible, I think, when we started. Their thinking wasn't there. So I think I look forward to that proceeding in the future too. As I said, a thanks to the Interim Management Committee. Much appreciate for your advice and assistance. And special thanks for Steve for volunteering to be Interim Administrator for the sort of last 2 months. Effectively 1 month, because the last month is caretaker mode. I was looking forward to that, to play golf, but I'll miss out on that. Thanks again to David and the staff for all your work. I do want to thank also, this is a strange group to thank, but the Queensland Parliament in a unanimous vote back in August last year Yes, to enable the sacking of the councillors. Having been here for 15 months, it was the right decision to do. Learning what I did learn about the organisation and the way that the organisation was run. Not that they need my support, but I can certainly understand that. I thank the state government and the Minister for Local Government in particular for entrusting me with the role, a sign of confidence that I still am bewildered about. But I do thank the Minister greatly for that. And thanks to the community. I know it's been a difficult journey for those watching this for the last 16 months, but it's been the right thing to do. And I do have great confidence and supreme confidence in the ability for the council and the community to proceed and continue and to grow, put this little period of history behind us all and move on. I also invite any members of the Intermanagement Committee to make any comments as well.
Maybe I'll just
Yep,
quickly,
thanks, Rob.
just from my perspective, and I'm probably summarising way too much here, but I think when we started, we identified in relation to what our focus should be, not in this order necessarily, but governance, culture and transformational change. And lots of things fit underneath those three categories. I guess the other thing was, and more immediately when we started, was to deal with complaints and grievances, which obviously were significant and needed a lot of input. And I think both Simone and Stan have done a fantastic job in getting that process done and through, and establishing the right frameworks and policies to move forward. I think in relation to the organisation, there's a great opportunity for the Ipswich City Council to make the most of this 16 months and really build into an organisation that is at leading practice. And I think that's one of the objectives we really wanted to see happen when we came down here, was to say, let's identify the areas where this council can lead practice and be at the right end of operation and be an example to other councils. And I think we've made good progress, but it's a journey, and that journey is going to continue, no doubt, under the management's leadership and the new council. So I just want to thank all my committee members, my interim management committee members for support and the camaraderie through the process, and I have really enjoyed my time here. So I couldn't really say that the day that I was asked to participate. I didn't know what it would be, but it's been a challenge. It's been interesting. I think there's some really great people here that have done really good work, and it's been good to have an opportunity to be a sounding board for those people. And I think once may be enough, but it was certainly enjoyable.
Thank you.
I might pass over.
I'd like to congratulate and celebrate the many individuals and teams who've worked very hard and with great significance to seek the transformation of this organisation in the pursuit of good governance. I acknowledge that that pursuit is an ongoing one, of course, as it is for every organisation always. For this organisation in particular, you move now from development of key scaffolds of governance to the implementation of those, and that is a very difficult phase to be in as you breathe life and effect into the documents, processes and systems that you've developed. I would encourage, as you embark on that very difficult challenge, the ethical leadership of all those who are charged with the responsibility to lead. I'd also encourage the stewardship of all officers at council, wherever they may be, for the public accountability of the public funds, the public powers that you hold on public trust for the benefit of the residents and ratepayers of Ipswich. I pay tribute to the courage, resilience and patience of many who have stepped up and in a very early and timely way identified areas that needed a priority focus, either for themselves or for the organisation generally, so that those matters could be attended to during the interim administration as a way of being able to let the whole organisation move forward. And I guess I underscore the importance of good governance generally and why all of that was worth it, for the courage of various change agents in the process through this last 16 months. Because although at times it feels for people that, oh, we're talking about good governance issues again, whether it be people, processes, systems and procedures, they are your enabling tool to do your strategic work. CBD, sports stadiums, the services that you offer to the community cannot happen if you don't do the right thing the right way at the right time with the right people to deliver those strategic objectives, and that's what good governance is about. So it really is a stitch in time, and it provides a safe and enjoyable and satisfying place to work. So good luck to you all. You're well on your way, and look out for each other.
Thank you. Thank you. Jane. Yeah.
Thanks, Simone. I think I'll probably take a different angle here because I think you two have ably summed up everything that's been happening at council. God help the last two people. Let me just say that I went into this task with a certain degree of trepidation as well. And I didn't enjoy the first couple of months, I must be honest and say. But I think that what has really uplifted me through this process, and it's probably appropriate because of where my interest lies, and that's the community generally, the pleasure that I've had in meeting and dealing with community people has been fantastic. I do quite a lot of shopping in Ipswich now. I'm happy to say I'm not a shopaholic, but I do quite a lot of shopping here, so I can speak with a certain degree of knowledge of the pleasure it is to deal with some of the retail outlets. In fact, every person I have ever dealt with who works in any shop in Ipswich has been phenomenal. They have a degree of I think acceptance of anyone and everything, which is just wonderful. And one of my favourite coffee shops has an intellectually challenged young man working there. And it's such a pleasure to go in there and find the degree of acceptance, and it's completely, they simply take it for granted. This is a young man who lives here, of course we'd give him a job. And he's just wonderful at what he does, but I think that generally Ipswich is a community that is extraordinarily diverse. You just have to look at the architecture around. I love driving through some of the streets of Ipswich and looking at some of those glorious grand old homes. Think what it would have been like to have lived in one of them, and kind of celebrate occasionally at what might have been if I'd had the money. But I think that Ipswich is a place that it's a microcosm of a whole lot of other areas, but what makes it different is an element of vitality that you don't necessarily find in other places. I've found nothing but pleasure in getting to know a whole range of people in this town, and I hope I don't lose those ties. I think that the council, as representing this community, has a wonderful job ahead of it. I wish all those future unnamed councillors the best of luck. I think that Greg has led a fantastic ship here, and all those who follow him, including Steve, can hopefully enjoy it as well. But it's been a pleasure and a challenge these last 15 months, and good luck for the next 15 years at least. I'll be watching.
Thank you.
Indeed. For me, I guess I think Greg, initially as coming into the leadership role in council, I would say thanks for being open to the advice and animated discussion that occurred between IMC members occasionally, and being willing to listen to that. It was, for me, not coming from a government background, more a corporate space, but to see bipartisan approach to pretty much everything that was achieved here over the last 18 months was tremendously enlightening for someone with my background. Each of the IMC who brought the members who brought a different skill to the team. I came in thinking I have my little piece, and that essentially joined me to Simone at the hip pretty much from day one. So of all the members, I got to work with Simone most closely, and to find a lawyer with a social conscience on a sleeve is a rare find indeed. To the rest, it's been a tremendous learning curve for me in terms of governance in government and working in government. And I'll take that back to my corporate future. To the team here within council, we pushed pretty hard, and we know that, to achieve what we did in the transformational projects and to achieve that change in culture that we all collectively sought. But congratulations to those who did stand up and take those reins. For those who may be listening, who we stood in front of in the early week or so that we were here and asked that they trust us in bringing forward those issues, those complaints, all that dirty laundry, that we were willing to listen, and some people who had raised them before and not felt that it had been properly dealt with or had been beaten down were willing to stand up one more time and trust us to take forward that. So that's a tremendous step to take, which I think is still seeing ripples through the entire organisation. We've been able to try and wrap those governance processes and procedures around that to support that, and I would hope that the incoming councillors will continue down that path. The framework's there, and I think that they can carry that forward. And lastly, the community who did embrace the minister's termination of the council. It was a bold move and quite a significant one in Queensland's history. So to be a part of that and the outcome of that, and feel supported in general, you know, keeping one eye on the local media about how we were going in the public's view, to see that come through very positively and supportive has been tremendous. It's taken up a lot for someone who normally bills by the hour. It's taken a lot of my time out here, and there's been some other side effects of that, but it has been really tremendous, and it's opened my eyes a lot to both how government operates, both at local and state levels, but how there's a lot of learnings here in the change that this organisation's gone through that can now be taken to others, which puts Ipswich from a place behind to a place in front, which is a tremendous achievement in 18 months. So thank you to everyone, and we hope forwards, it goes forwards.
Steve.
One of the benefits of going last, isn't it? Look, I won't spend too much time. I do reflect the thoughts and the comments of the other IMC members. And I must admit, when I was honestly, when I was offered this position and when the minister contacted me, I didn't think about it too deeply, to be honest. I actually thought about it quite lightly. It was only about the first 30 minutes, I think, we were out here, that first time we were out here, and I was actually speaking to you, Tony, about some of the what had been happening in council, and just generally the impact on staff. It really hit me. I quickly sobered up, not that I'd been drinking, and realised that, you know, this was a very serious role and a very serious challenge for us all. So it's very rare in anyone's career that you actually have an opportunity to be a part of something significant that is going to genuinely impact on the future of a lot of people in a community. So for that I'm particularly appreciative. Greg, we've never worked closely together, and this is the first time. I've really enjoyed it. I've become one of Greg's biggest promoters outside of council. I'm going to say a pimp, but that's probably not because I found this is, everything we've done, we've had to reinvent, or we've had to invent. It's all new. None of this is done. There is no guidebook.
No, it's a
There
pity.
Yeah, that's
Would have been
right.
handy.
There is no one to follow. So this is, everything that we've done and everything that every decision, process, program that you've driven and that we've been part of has all been you, and that's very, very difficult, but also very rewarding too. So that's good. So thank you, Greg. It's been, and for that, and as Stan I think said and others reflected on, the IMC is a group of very different people, all different, very different backgrounds, and that has created some interesting discussions. But it's also been the strength of the IMC too. Been very enjoyable. Thank you for your collegiate nature, even though sometimes there were stresses. And I'll even include Rob in that too. Thank you. The senior executive, as has been said, it's hard, and I think in some ways it has been hard, but I think going forward it's quite easy for us. Our time, well, even my time towards the end of March, we move on, but the real load is going to be borne by a senior executive who've been through massive change, massive stress before that, massive change, and now you're going through continuous change. So I think senior executives, senior managers, that's the ones where I'm particularly aware and concerned, not concerned, but I do recognise that is where the weight is being carried for this organisation. And it's something that I know that David's very focused on in terms of ensuring the well-being of all senior managers who will be carrying this reform process going forward. Thank you for your support and forbearance. And obviously I'm coming back on the 13th, so you'll see more of me.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks all. Last comment is a comment I make very regularly, that I and the IMC are incredibly strong supporters of democracy, so, which is an interesting phrase because this is a very undemocratic job. But our job was to get this council back on its feet so elected reps have a good platform to bring democracy back to the city. So proudly I think we've done that, and I think we've achieved our job. Privilege again, and thank you very much. I'll declare the meeting closed.
We've got a meeting